Kia ora, and welcome to Wednesday's Economy Watch, where we follow the economic events and trends that affect Aotearoa. I'm David Chaston, and this is the international edition from interest.co.nz. And today we lead with news: uncertainty swirls in the Middle East as Iran has shot down an American Apache helicopter, and Trump is looking more like Jimmy Carter by the day. But more ships are transiting, paying Iran's tolls, and that extra oil is easing the global price. But first, locally, the overnight dairy pulse auction delivered lower prices for the four products offered. AMF was down 4.6% from the last week's full auction, butter was down 0.6%, skim milk powder down 5.5%, and whole milk powder down 3.5%. But an intervening 2% fall in the New Zealand dollar took some of the sting out of these retreats. In the US, the NFIB Business Optimism Index fell again into its lowest since October 2024. These businesses are struggling with significant and unpredictable hikes in fuel costs, which they find harder to pass on to their customers compared to their larger corporate competitors. And the weekly ADP jobs report said new private sector jobs created were lower last week at 29,000. In fact, they're lowest since the end of March. American existing home sales actually rose in May to an annualised rate of 4.17 million, its highest of the year. This was impressive because mortgage interest rates rose in that period and seems not to have been a handbrake sometimes assumed. All the same, unsold inventory rose. And there was a small but notable increase in demand for the overnight and popular US Treasury 3-year bond, which delivered a median yield of 4.15%, sharply up on the 3.92% median at the prior equivalent event a month ago. In April, US exports of goods and services rose 2.6% from March, 12.5% from a year ago, helped by better exports of crude oil, AI computer gear and aircraft, but mostly offset by quite a sharp fall in tourism receipts. Imports were up 1.9% from March, up 9.1% from a year ago, dominated by capital goods and rising transport and travel costs by Americans. Their trade deficit narrowed slightly, but the big trade deficits remained with Taiwan, Vietnam, Mexico, China, the EU and Canada. And the Texas screwworm outbreak is spreading, which will affect their beef trade. And the outbreak now includes for a dog. Meanwhile, Canadian exports rose 1.6% from the previous month to 75 billion Canadian dollars in April, the highest on record, and up 24.7% from the same month a year ago. Imports rose too, but they still managed to report their best monthly trade surplus since January 2025 and their best April since 2008. Across the Pacific, China's exports surged 19% in May from a year ago to a record high of $377 billion, far exceeding forecasts of a 15% rise and accelerating sharply from April's 14% rise. It was their fastest increase since February and gave them a trade surplus of $105 billion. However, Chinese oil imports hit an 8-year low in May. Across the strait, Taiwan said its exports rose even more impressively, up 52% from a year ago. Their imports are up 55% though. That means a trade surplus for them of almost $18 billion, middle range for what they've had since October 2025, and wildly higher than any prior period. Japanese machine tool orders fell in May from April after falling in April too, but they remain up 37% from a year ago. The monthly easing was for orders for both domestic and foreign customers. And staying in Japan, reports are growing that their central bank will raise its policy rate by 25 basis points to 1% when they meet on Friday next week. And they're likely to pause their Japanese bond sell-down program that is underway. And in Indonesia, their central bank held an emergency meeting to assess the economic crisis growing in their financial and foreign exchange markets. At that meeting, they hiked their policy rate to 5.5%, a hike of 25 basis points. They last met only 3 weeks ago, and they raised their rate by 25 basis points at that time too. They started 2026 with a 4.75% rate. Their actions are required to stop the Indonesian currency falling sharply, down 7.8% in 2026 so far. In Europe, the Netherlands has blocked an American company from buying a local firm that handles national ID systems. saying it would create a threat to the public interest. The US Treasury 10-year yield is now just on 4.53%, down 2 basis points for the day. And the price of gold will start today down $75 at $4,258 an ounce. Silver's down a sharp $3.50 at just under $65 an ounce. And oil prices are down $2.50 from yesterday at just on $88.50 a barrel, while the international Brent price is now just on $91.50 a barrel. Hormuz transits are still very low despite the pricing optimism. China's crude imports dropped to around 7.8 million barrels per day last month, the lowest level in more than 8 years and nearly 4 million barrels per day below the 2025 average. Weaker shipments to the world's largest oil importer, even if caused by Hormuz, combined with record US exports and emergency reserve releases, has limited the price impact of the Middle East conflict. And the Kiwi dollar is up 10 basis points from this time yesterday at 58.2 US cents. Against the Aussie, we're up 30 basis points at 82.8 Australian cents. Against the euro, we're unchanged, though, at 50.4 euro cents. That all means our trade-weighted index starts today at just on 61.9, which is up 10 basis points from yesterday. And the Bitcoin price starts today at just on $61,545, down 2.95% from yesterday. Volatility over the past 24 hours has been moderate at just on plus or minus 2.6%. You can get more news affecting the economy in New Zealand from interest.co.nz. Kia ora, I'm David Chaston, and we'll do this again tomorrow.